So now I want to take a look at securing my website using a role-based security. So I want to create a role, add some users to that role, and then secure the folders based on that role. So if I look at the one I've been working on here with this state example, I would like the users to see all the states and select a state and be able to see the details. But I don't want a regular user to be able to edit and delete. And I don't want a regular user to be able to add a new state. I want to leave those as administrative details only for administrators. So when I've thought about the roles I would like to set up, I really just need two. I need the administrator who can edit, delete, and add. And then I need an unauthenticated user, or anyone can view. So for role-based security, I'll start off by creating a folder for those roles. And new state can go into that role. And I want to make a copy of the state details and view all state because I want some of that functionality for the users, but I also want some of that functionality for the administrator. So I'll copy and paste them. If I'm an administrator, I want to leave it essentially unchanged. I want to be able to view a state, select a state, and then once the state is selected, be able to edit and delete it, and I have that functionality already, and I want to be able to add a new. When I'm looking at unauthenticated users, or just anyone from the internet, I want them to see the state and be able to select it, and when they select it, I want them to see the details, but not edit and delete it. So I don't need my label. I can get rid of that. And if I get into the grid view, I can remove those things. And I'll edit my data source. I'm going to do this in the source code. For data source 1, I don't need to delete, and I don't need to insert, but I do need to select, and I don't need to update. When I'm looking at the commands, I don't need to delete. I don't need to insert. I do want to select, and I don't need to update. So all this does for the user is just select. So let's test this unauthenticated user functionality. Nothing changed here when I select a state. Yes, I have some details left in my code behind. And again, I don't need to worry about deleted or updated. I can get rid of those. Now let's test the functionality. And it's working as we would expect for an unauthenticated user. They can see things, but they can't edit things or delete or add things. Okay, so I've got that functionality working. Now let me check it for the admin. The administrator can view. When they pick one, they can edit. They can delete. And they can add a new one. Okay, so the functionality is working like I expected. Now I want to secure this admin folder that has these extra features using an administrator role. So I'm going to create a role of admin and then drop a user into that role. And Microsoft has a utility to help us do this. If I look at the database, you'll see I created a new database, and the only table there is just state facts. It's the one that's drawing that information for the web page. I need to add a bunch of other tables in here that will support the role-based security. And in order to do that, I'm just going to run a Microsoft utility. I need to get a DOS box open. I need to get into the C drive. And after I get into the C drive, I need to get into the Windows folder, CD, Windows. I need to get into the Microsoft.NET folder. The Framework folder. The version 2.0.50727 folder. And I need to run the utility ASP.NET reg sql.exe. Configure SQL Server for applications. And this information will be detailed on icon for you. After I run the utility and it closes, I can refresh my database. And I see there are a bunch of other tables now. All of these that start out ASP.NET or ASP.NET _. Those were all created by the ASP.NET Register SQL utility. And these are all here to support role-based security. Generally speaking, I shouldn't edit or modify these tables directly. I should use my code to make any modifications in here. Now I can open them up and look at them, and we'll do that here in just a minute. So after the tables have been added to your database, and you only need to do this one time. So in your shared database where 3 or 4 of you are using the same database, it only needs to be done one time by one user, and then everyone can use the functionality. So after that's been added, then on icon you'll find Site Manager zip file. You'll need to unzip it, and it's just a folder that gets pasted into your project. And there are 3 files in it. Add a new user, a role manager, and then a CSS file. First thing we're going to do is add our new role. So let's view this in the browser. Oh yes, the connection string is messed up. So we'll need to go through and correct the connection string. That's all in the code behind. And the connection string we're actually going to set it to is this, db statefacts. Now this is just some code that was hacked together pretty quickly to allow us to manage roles. This role-based access control is the oldest version that ASP.NET has. And so it's still supported and it's still fully functional, but they've taken away some of the pretty front-end tools. So we've had to work our own magic here. And as such, we'll have to do a little bit of debugging. So everywhere we see that connection string tool rental, we just replace it with our current connection string. Okay, so I'm in the web config file. I'll get inside of System Web. And all this is saying is to enable role-based security. We're going to use forms authentication. And here's the path to the login file. I'll save this. Now let me view it in my browser. I'm going to add a new role. I like to start my roles with an R so I know their role. I'm going to use my Huck ID next so all of my roles stay together. This isn't necessary, but in the shared database, it makes it nice to keep all your stuff together. And then I'm going to create the role that I want. And I add this new role, and now I can see that it's up here as a current role. Next thing I need to do now is add a new user. And for this user, I'm just going to call it Mike C. And I'm going to create the user. And now I want to add a user to a role. So I want to add Mike C to the role admin. So now I have a user named Mike C, and Mike is a member of the administrator role. So it's kind of a convoluted way to get things set up. But after you have the first one set up, then we can do it all in the code behind. Now, the next thing I want to do is lock out this administrator folder. So the only people that can get in there are administrators. And the only administrator we have right now is Mike C. So I'm going to add a new web config file. And I'm going to leave the default name. And so now this web config file is inside of the admin folder. And inside of this web config file that's in my admin folder, inside of the system web, I can secure the folder. So these are going to allow specific roles. So I need to edit this to be the role I wanted, that I created, my administrator. Then I'm going to deny users question mark. Use this question mark under users means unauthenticated users. So people that haven't entered a username and password. And then if I had other roles, I could specifically deny roles if I wanted. But this should be enough security for me. So it's going to allow administrators, users who are in this administrator role, and it's going to deny people that are not administrators. And I'll just take this same information, and while I'm here, secure this site manager. In the same way. So now I have my role created, I have my user created and added to that role, and I've secured my folders. I need a way for the user to log in. And if you noticed in web config, we said we're going to use forms login. The path to log in is login folder login.aspx file. So I need to create that infrastructure now. And in this new folder, or in this new file, I want to just drop a login control. Now, in the code behind, I'll want to do a couple of things. One is I'll want to detect the role and then redirect them after login based on their role membership. So I need to find that login control. My event will be logged in, so after the user's been authenticated and logged in. If roles the role name. So I'm going to just check to see if this username is in this role. So the person that just logged on, are they an administrator? If they are true, then I'm going to redirect them into the admin site. If they are not, then I'm just going to send them to the regular page. Okay, let's test this functionality. If I attempt to view a page that's secured, it prompts me to log in. After I logged in, it redirected me into the admin folder, the view all states, and then in here I can edit, delete, and I could add a new state. Okay. But if I am not logged in, it would not let me in there. Each time it will prompt me for that login page. So it looks like everything is working well. I still have some usability issues to take care of, but my role-based security appears to be working fine.